Hi, everyone. This is Brian O'Leary. I'm here with Matt Davis, Dynasty Peasant on Twitter. How we doing, Matt?
Pretty good. How's it going?
Good, good. Thanks for joining us. Let's try something new. Let's not make a fool out of ourselves. Hopefully, people want to listen. But I've kind of found Dynasty is a funny game. You don't necessarily have to be a football guy to be good at it. Like myself, for example, I don't really watch a ton of football. I'll watch highlights. I'll watch clips. I'll listen to smart people. How about you? Are you a big football guy?
Yeah, I mean that's how I got into it. Diehard football fan since I was 4 or 5, 6 years old. Been playing fantasy for 20 years at least, going back to around late '90s, early 2000s. But yeah, I got into Dynasty 2017. Me and my buddy got we read an article about it, got our home redraft league into it, and then shortly after that, I jumped on Twitter, started looking at other people, I was looking up people in Dynasty, and from there, kind of you know how it is, find the little
Yeah,
Twitter community, so that was pretty cool.
yeah. It's a cool community for sure. Like you kind of find one person and then you kind of branch off of that and like, hey, this person recommends this guy and that guy, and then you kind of
Yeah.
go from there. And all of a sudden, you got this cool, expansive network that I think you and I both enjoy a good deal and gain a lot of knowledge from.
Yeah, man, and like as long as you're cool and stuff, people are more than willing to invite you into new leagues. If you're looking to find new leagues, you hop on Twitter. I mean, you find. I mean, talk about like Dynasty Zoltan and like other people like that. There's dozens of people that will help get you in leagues, and so yeah, no, that's definitely a cool part of the community for sure.
It's a major vibe situation for sure. That's what I've noticed myself. You give and you get kind of thing. Um,
Yeah, no,
you said you've been a big football guy most of your life. I don't want to say I don't watch football, but I think I'm less hardcore than a lot of people. But I've kind of noticed what I've loved about Dynasty so far, and I've been playing since 2018, is just the fact that you can learn so much and not have to know like, hey, this is the X receiver or this is a run play that way or that this way, and like what the like behind the scenes real deep cut stuff is. And you can read people in situations that like maybe you're more familiar with. So it's almost like a stock market game in a way.
yeah, and
You know?
like there's people, there's like analytics guys like that Drew DF Bean
Yeah.
counter guy. That I don't think it's a bit with him. Like he lives in Canada. I genuinely think he doesn't watch a lot of NFL football. I think he watches some games, but uh, yeah, he's an accountant by trade, and just playing the numbers and playing it like a stock market. Especially, I mean, it would take someone like that, like a couple of years to get used to the timing the market, the fluctuations, all that. But yeah, you could definitely be successful at Dynasty without ever watching an NFL game. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's what's kind of that's a great segue to our next and overall topic, I guess, is that we want to talk about market fluctuation, and I think we can both give different perspectives, different viewpoints on players, maybe value fluctuations that we see that are different. You might like a guy more than I do, and vice versa. And obviously, anyone that has really played this game knows that sometimes you can fall on your face, right? So like you're gonna be wrong sometimes, but that's the important part of the game. And if you don't take any chances or kind of trust your gut or your feelings or people that you trust, you're never gonna get anywhere. So with that, I want us to kind of like divulge some good and bad, right? So it's not always gonna be good, it's not always gonna be bad. So like my example of my favorite trade this offseason, I traded Devontae Adams, I traded Derrick Henry, and then a 2024 second for Bijan, who I'm head over heels with. I think almost everybody is. So I'm not unique in that front. That's my favorite of the offseason.
Yeah, I remember that trade.
Yeah.
That did cause
So,
some
yeah,
comments.
yeah. So you mentioned, I think a lot of people had comments about that trade. I still see it for the other guy too, that he was super win now. He didn't necessarily trust Bijan, was trying to load up his roster. And I think the guy that I traded with is pretty knowledgeable and experienced too. So it's not a matter of like, again, we're talking about like what you do or don't like. It's all preference. Everyone that's played Dynasty sees the win now only guys versus like, hey, let's play for 2 or 3 years from now, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what's so beautiful about the game is that you can play so many different ways, right? And so that's my favorite. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah. So I actually have 2 back-to-back ones that are turned out best and worst for the same reason. So that can segue back to you when it comes to the worst trade that you made. But both of the best and worst trades I think I've made this offseason were in January, and they were overreacting to the Brock Purdy injury from the playoffs and the UCL, and everybody thought that I thought it was an 8-9 month injury, and Trey Lance would be the guy. And so in one league, and this is a pretty bad one. Your bad one, I don't think we'll top this one. But so in a league that I'm still a contender in, and that I finished as the 1 seed last year, and I traded away Josh Allen, and I got back Trey Lance and Mark Andrews, and that's it. I did not.
And we're talking tight end premium, I assume. That's
1.5 tight end premium. And my thinking, at the time was, all right, if Trey Lance is not the guy, then whatever. There's going to be a September sell window, but like the UCL injury to Purdy plus Lance being healthy again, it should have been his job to get a chance to begin with. There's all sorts of stats that were being floated on Twitter about first round quarterbacks, especially ones taken in the top 10, at least got like 22 different starts. Lance got 3.5. So in my mind, I was like, all right, I want to upgrade majorly at tight end.
Yeah.
This guy's going to get it. And then, I would say even at the time, that was bad process. I would say at the time I made this trade, there was Twitter polls going around that Trey Lance was valued around the 104 to 105 in startups, to give you an idea. And so the other trade that I made, that turned out great for me, I think, was that Fools trade that you're in our league Ship of Fools. I traded Trey Lance to our buddy Goose for Trey Lance and the 110 to Goose for Tom Brady, who I thought was playing at the time, CMC and Mostert. And it's funny, I since traded away CMC, but Mostert helped me win this week. I used him. And I traded away CMC a couple weeks ago, and after he realized his value, all that. So yes, it's same thing, good and bad, behind the same concept of just believing too much in Trey Lance over Brock Purdy. And at that time, I would say both Goose and I should have both known better in terms of Brock Purdy going 6-0. There was writing on the wall there that we were kind of ignoring.
It's a perfect example of I think the Dynasty community in general picks their champions, right? So they're like, hey, Trey Lance is the guy, and they'll look for any shred of possibility for Trey Lance to take over, despite all of what the coaches said. Brock Purdy, successful, both winning and statistically he was pretty good. So that is definitely an interesting trade. I thought you might go, at least there's a couple interesting trades I think you've made, positive and maybe some negative for schools.
Yeah, there was a lot to choose from.
It's a fun one. Yeah. And
but I like highlighting the economy there of Trey Lance.
For those who don't know, Matt is the biggest trader I've seen by a landslide. He'll trade with anybody. He's not just bully trading. He's, there's going to be some wins. There's going to be some losses. And he's based it on volume and his general knowledge of the market to get ahead of things. So I trust that process that you have tenfold.
And I would also say that unlike a lot of the people that we play with, I don't always view everything as just like a look at, like, I'm in 18 leagues, but I don't necessarily view it as like a portfolio or like buy or sell this guy. And like the only thing that matters is my profit and loss statement, like at the end of the day, like all that. No, I think it's very clear. If you're in a league with me for more than a week or two, you know that I basically just trade to have fun. I try to win as much as I lose so I don't kill my teams. But to me, trading is the funnest part about Dynasty. I'm not, I do this as a hobby. It's not supplementary income for me.
Right. And I think that's, again, you're looking at a different angle that, you can't define what that other person's angle is going to be, whether it's they're just trying to, stay in the green, if they're having fun, if they just are spending some time away from this, or maybe it's another form of gambling, whatever else, there's a million different things that you can do to do within Dynasty. So I think you're a great example of that for sure. And I've seen you be pretty darn successful. So my bad isn't that dramatic, but in March I traded in tight end premium. I traded Brandon Ayuk, who's a hot item this week, and I'm dreading it. And on a contender, I traded it for Dallas Goedert. So it's not the worst trade, but if we're going week one overreactions, like Ayuk is trending way up, Goddard's trending way down. So And in hindsight, I probably wouldn't have done this trade because soon after that, there was a tanking team that traded me Mark Andrews. So then it was like, now I have surplus that I still like. I don't mind bully tight end, but I didn't need to necessarily make that move, and I could still be sitting with Ayuk with Mark Andrews despite him missing week one. So that is our first ups and downs trades. I'm sure we'll have plenty more to record and have people giggle at from now and then. So that's another thing to think about moving forward for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So the first thing that I want us to touch on from this past week, it's been talked about it kind of ad nauseum at this point, but Monday Night Football, a lot of headlines, right? So like Aaron Rodgers, 4 plays in, torn Achilles.
Yeah.
Just insane, right? Like anyone that said like the NFL is scripted, they would not have scripted that. I mean, that went off the book for sure.
Yeah, no
right?
doubt.
Like that. So there's that. You have Josh Allen throws 3 picks and looks kind of like crap, honestly. Granted, Jets defense is pretty good, but throwing 3 interceptions. You got Diggs, actually, who I thought I was maybe going to be fading a little bit just with the matchup with Sauce Gardner.
Yeah.
10 catches, 102 yards, touchdown on 13 targets. So, like, Josh Allen plays like crap. Diggs produces great. And then you got Breece Hall, who, again, I faded because I was nervous about snap count. He looked maybe not full strength, but pretty close. Like, he had the 83-yard run in the first half. I mean, it was impressive, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, so I mean, in general, and obviously the Jets beating the Bills. So I don't know if you had any takeaways, value, up, down, sideways in terms of players, in terms of teams. What were you thinking when you were watching that game?
Yeah, obviously, the Rodgers things just took the air out of the whole night, I think, for a lot of us. Not only were we like, this isn't going to be that good of an NFL game, or a lot of us are already concerned about our Rodgers shares. Garrett Wilson was affected almost as arguably as much as anyone who owned Rodgers. Anyone who had Garrett affected just as much. So that kind of took it out. Breece, I would say, is probably the biggest story of the night in terms of, like, he just looks back. He looks great. If you want to talk about him being equal to Bijan, I have no reason to really argue against it. I mean, so
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think so I think he's clearly reestablished his value. I still think Brees, by the way, still think he's going to be worked back in. It's not like he's going to take over this backfield, but he showed last night he doesn't need to get his points.
I mean, yeah, he only had 10 carries, and it was, I think, obviously he had the 83-yard run, but I think he had another, I forget exactly how long, but 30, 40-yard run as well that he just kind of he made things happen, right? So it's similar to a couple of guys we'll talk about a little bit later, Bijan and Gibbs, that it was just like you can see that they're just different, right? They're moving different. That it's even if they are getting 10, 15 touches, those are going to be super efficient. You're going to have massive plays. You're going to have spike weeks. I'm totally there with you with Brees. I'm not sure I would put him on the same playing field as Bijan with just some injury risk and maybe offensive woes, especially Rodgers out, but maybe that helps him. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think, I'd still have Bijan above him. Man, but a second would get me to look at it and consider it, or any type of player like that worth a second. All of us are very high on Jahmyr Gibbs. Give me Brees Hall over Jahmyr Gibbs. CMC, on a win now team, I think I'd still take CMC, but it is close. I really don't actually. I mean, I really don't know that I would. I have CMC on 3 contenders.
So I traded CMC for Hall in the offseason in one league.
Yeah.
And this was Brees Hall started trending up a little bit. This was still they were thinking he was going to miss some time. And I mean, I don't regret it, but I love CMC on the same side of it. So it's always tough partying with him. But if you're going to get a guy like you're talking about, that it's just whole nother level, and
yeah, I don't think you can go
3-4 years younger than him. It's okay, well, running back, we know it's volatile anyways. We might as well make a good bet if we're talking market.
But to me, those are the 3 guys we're talking about, and then it would be Gibbs solidly at number 4 by himself almost, and I don't by himself in that tier. But any type of contending team I would take Bijan, CMC, and Brees over Gibbs. And like I said, I think Brees is pretty close to Bijan. But so that was a big takeaway of mine. And then outside of the obvious terrible effect that losing Rodgers has on Garrett, I don't know that we need to spend that much time on that. To me, I think we all know if they don't upgrade their quarterback in any type of way, Garrett Wilson he's Drake London this year. That's what he is. He's an awesome player that is a wide receiver 3 in redraft every week.
Yeah, you're not going to sit back and rely on 10 to 15 quality targets per game. It's just not going to happen probably, right? So that's if we're looking at the way Garrett Wilson was drafted, he has to get that type of range of action, in my opinion. That it's am I still buying him because I think he's an elite all over the field receiver? Yes, but it's not something that it's not a sure thing now almost.
And
it's solidified.
Yeah, and I think that's all tied in together in terms of that also makes me more bullish on Brees. Until they figure out a better plan, I think the Jets are just going to try and 2,000 Ravens this thing as best they can to 11-6. See how it goes.
They ride the defense. Yeah, I mean it's a tough, hard-nosed defense. That made it very clear yesterday. So
yeah, so I mean unless we get big quarterback news, if they really do plan, let's say Robert Saleh is telling the truth, they're going to stick with Zach Wilson the rest of the year. Man, I really don't want anyone except Brees Hall, and I really am interested in Dalvin Cook too, as long as he's upright and healthy. I mean, I think we're talking about a team that's looking to run the ball 40 times a game from here on out. That's what their game plan showed last night after Rodgers went out. They didn't. They gave Zach Wilson one shot. He threw that deep, not even deep. It was like intermediate pick, where it wasn't even close. After that, they shut everything down. They didn't even throw it anything outside 5 yards. They didn't trust him at all.
The trust or lack of trust is tangible throughout. It felt like throughout the stadium, no one trusts. Like everyone's on pins and needles. If I was watching the Manning cast, so like Peyton was like quivering every time he dropped back. Like, what the heck is this guy going to do here? Like, no clue. Like, throw it away, throw it away, throw it away. Where if Rodgers is back there, he's just sitting and thinking like, I want to see what cool thing he might try here or whatever. So it's we're not even going to sit here and compare the two. It's obvious that they're night and day different. But you talked about CMC, so I want us to kind of segue over into that Steelers 49ers team, 49ers game. So I know, at least from my vantage point, it seemed like the Steelers were getting a lot of preseason hype, right? ADPs were driving up. Pickett was like, maybe you can stretch the field this year. Deontay this, Pickett that. All three of those guys' values to me were skyrocketing in the preseason. I didn't agree, but I saw that happening just based on people's trading and startup picks. Did you see something similar, or am I just kind of crazy?
No, I saw Pickett getting hype. I did not see a lot of trades being made off of the hype. I saw a lot of hype on Twitter, but I didn't see a ton of trades being made off of it. The one thing I thought was kind of funny was that I think a lot of people would agree that Deontay is, before this latest hamstring injury, the safest fantasy option. The hype almost seemed to not affect him. Like, to me, it was like Pickett and Pickens and Jalen Warren were getting hype, but like Deontay was just like nobody's that excited about him. And so I saw some hype, but I didn't see a lot of like action being made off of it. And that might just be small sample size. You know, I'm only in 18.
And so that leads me to my next question, right? So like, all this hype happened, and then they play the 49ers, and it's 20-30 nothing in the first half. It felt like almost instantaneously, right? So is it 49ers defense good, or Steelers offense, same old Steelers offense with Pickett, you think?
Combination, but I think it's a good indication that we should not expect material improvement from last year. I mean, Kenny Pickett, I'm not a data guy. I'm not a numbers guy. I think he had a historically low touchdown percentage based on like the number of pass attempts he had last year. Like that, like regression is almost certainly going to come there. But no, I think the main takeaway that you and I had talked about, that we were immediate reaction is right here. We don't want any part of the Steelers offense really. And I would say even with Deontay with the hamstring, let's say Deontay's out the next few weeks, I don't have that much additional interest in George Pickens. Like, to me, Deontay being out is not going to affect my George Pickens redraft stance at all. Like, for example, I'm still going to think of him as a boom bust wide receiver 3.
I think that opens up a great window for selling Pickens, right? Because people always do this where they apply like, 10 targets are missing. They'll all go to George Pickens, and they'll be how George Pickens gets the ball. In reality, it's probably going to be like a couple more dump offs, hit the slot guy. I'm drawing a blank on his name, over the middle, that type of stuff. That it's not necessarily going to. It's just like these 10 targets go to George Pickens, and he scores 2 touchdowns because of it. I mean, like you said, Pickens Sunday had 46 attempts, barely over 200 yards, and he was QB 21. So it's like, you're throwing the ball 46 times and losing like in that type of game script, and you're still QB 21 on the week. It's not a good outlook.
I would say to me the only Steelers takeaway that I'm taking away from that game is negative, and it's that Najee has always been a volume dependent guy. He's even his backers have said that handling 25 touches a week is what he's capable of doing. All that, they're not going to use him that way. If there's I don't think I would rather have Najee than Brian Robinson in Dynasty right now. So like to me, that's who I view Najee as. Najee is Brian Robinson. And if you'd ask me who I'd rather have right now, it's about equal. I don't care either way. Throw me a third either way, and I'll make that switch. But I mean, to be fair, I've never been a Najee guy, but to me, that has to be the takeaway. I don't see what after they split work this week, basically. And I mean, maybe the blowout you could say is a reason because of that, but yeah, to me, you have to downgrade Najee. If he's not getting 80% of the snaps, he's nowhere near what his startup ADP was this offseason.
Right. Yep, I'm with you.
But yeah, other than that,
can you hear me?
I can hear you, but yeah, now you're back now.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, but your video is
okay.
dropping.
Yeah, so trying to switch it here, but there we go. Okay.
It's muted, by the way, if you're speaking.
Okay. Yeah. So I think you're on the right track in the sense of like Brian Robinson versus Najee. Najee has like that name still, like he's a name brand. Brian Robinson, you can get something similar production wise, a lot cheaper. He's usually like a toss in my experience in like trades, that type of stuff. Like Brian Robinson is like, oh, okay, let's get this deal across the finish line.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, yeah, if I can go move Najee for Brian Robinson in a second, even if it's a late second, I don't think I'm losing anything there.
Yeah, exactly. All right. With that, so we talked plenty with the team that we don't really like, either of us, but CMC obvious, 100 and a touchdown, Ayuk monster game. But what do we think about Debo? I know you're a Debo guy.
I'm still happy with Debo after that game. I mean, I think he got 7 targets, and that's in a complete blowout win. For me, I don't overthink Debo that much. To me, Debo's one of the best players in the NFL. Just full stop. I think he's one of the best players in the league with the ball in his hands. On the very short list, top 5 of Yak guys. Give this guy 5, 6, 7 touches a game, and I expect I'll be happy with his fantasy production. And this offseason, he dropped understandably to that 6th, 7th round value. And at that point, I'm just going to take him. If I can get Debo for less than a 1st round pick at any cost, I'm going to take him. So that's why I ended up with 27%, 5 out of 18 leagues. And I'm still happy at that cost, right? A couple years ago, if he's a top 36 overall pick, startup pick, no, I'm very concerned. But you're drafting him literally to be a wide receiver 3 or a flex guy this offseason. So I still expect him to be that. Ayuk's the number 1 on that team, though. I think we need to stop with this narrative of, and not everybody has it, but it's common spread enough that, oh, Ayuk, Debo, CMC, Kittle, they have 4 all-pro guys. Who's going to get the ball? Like, Ayuk's going to get the ball. Ayuk's the number 1 target on that team. And I think that the offense should be treated that way going forward.
And I don't think they need like the volume that some players need to produce what we want them to produce, right? Like,
yeah.
Are we going to get top 5 Debo season? No, probably not. But he's going to be super efficient. He's explosive. He'll have big weeks for you that, you can win because of his performances, in my opinion.
So my other thing about that game, and this has me a little worried because I do not have any shares at all. I'm at 0% in Dynasty. You can make an argument, I think, right now that Brock Purdy is the single best buy in Dynasty at any position. Like if he's just going to be good this year, and let's say you compare him to some guy like Tony Romo, and he's just a QB1 for the next 7 years. Let's not even say that San Francisco's are going to re-sign him. Let's say he's just a low-end QB1 for the next 2 years while establishing his value. Why isn't that guy like a 4th-round startup pick right now?
And he looked good. He looked good. I'm as much of a skeptic as just about anyone that I've come across.
Yeah, there's a reason I have 0 shares.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have him on a couple teams where I got him as like a toss in. I'm like taking over an orphan, that type of thing. But that was not someone I'm was not actively going after, and that's definitely something that I think we might still be able to get in low. But his value is going to keep going. I would say as long as he stays healthy, all he has to do is just kind of put it out there for him. I mean, they have weapons and an offense to do it. So.
Yeah, and like the only other thing, last thing I'd say about that is TJ Watt absolutely terrorized Brock Purdy on Sunday, and it didn't really affect the game or his production at all. TJ Watt, I think he had 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, like a few more QB pressures. He absolutely dominated that game, and it did not affect the 49ers offense that much.
He looks super poised. Yeah, totally. I totally agree. I'm starting to come around. I don't want him to burn me the other way, but man, I think I want to get some before it's too late, kind of thing.
Same.
All right. So we talked about Purdy, who was kind of a shining star, random, come out of nowhere rookie last year. Let's talk about some of the guys that we knew or we expected to kind of explode. Maybe not the first game like they did, but just in general.
Yeah.
These are the big guys. And obviously we're talking Bijan, we're talking Gibbs, we're talking Anthony Richardson, Addison, Laporta, Kincaid, Musgrave. We got Flowers, who to me, Flowers is the shining star for week 1. I don't want to be an overactor. I don't want to get too excited or ahead of myself. But I mean, right from his first catch, I don't know if you saw it, but he caught like kind of in the flat, did a quick move to the middle and spun back and just completely left the defender in his wake. And right then and there, I was like, man, this guy wants to be him. I mean, I know he's
Zay and AR were like tied for number 1 rookie story for me, but I agree with you.
And we're talking if we're talking about just like in terms of just pure like sexiness in their debut, Bijan, that touchdown he had, he left 3 guys out of. He's totally left them in his dust, plowed into the end zone. We got Gibbs that if he didn't trip would have had a couple nice touchdowns. He looks faster than everybody on the field, and we're talking against the Super Bowl champs.
Yeah,
it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, Gibbs and Bijan showed everything you'd want to see from them, and Anthony Richardson, I would say, is a big story only because he was so polarizing on an NFL level. Everybody expected big things from fantasy, but I think he looked incredible from a real life perspective, which I don't think can be overstated enough in terms of him and his team's offense not looking nearly as lost as say Bryce Young and CJ Stroud were. And then, but to your point, AR, Gibbs, Bijan, we're talking about top 4 overall rookie picks. Right. Zay is a big story of the guys outside the top 5 for sure. He's got to be.
Yeah, for sure. And then when like Laporta, Kincaid, Musgrave, we're talking about guys that are a little bit further out. I put in my notes Matt Dean, Mayer. I never was really impressed with him. I heard everyone talk since he was a freshman in college at Notre Dame that this guy is going to come in and, maybe he still will. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. But that was one guy that I was definitely I was early on the Laporta train and Musgrave train. I wish I got a little bit more, but those were two guys that, and it's definitely not a victory lap because it's so far from being decided. But Mayer was the guy ahead of them for the beginning of rookie drafts in my experience, and I'm sad that it shifted the other way for my later rookie drafts.
Yeah, I got stuck with one Mayer share in our Fools League, and even as recently as before the season a couple weeks ago, I couldn't trade it straight up for Musgrave anymore, which I was happy about and also sad about. I've Musgrave I got in 33% of my league, 6 out of 18, and Musgrave is almost someone where like me and you are in a chat group and people were kind of like, man, shut the hell up by now. Like, but like, it was blowing my mind that Musgrave's value was not raising more this August in terms of his athletic profile, his rookie draft capital, and all the reports that were coming out of camp of he's got the tight end one position locked down. He has no competition for it. He's going to be a day one starter and run 80+% of the routes, and like nobody gave a shit. Like, and so I was just kind of losing my mind and just going to buy up Musgrave, except where people that were a little more tuned in already had him. So I ended up with 6 out of 18 shares, and Musgrave, like you said, like him and Laporta. I would say Kincaid. Kincaid was already more hyped than the Musgrave and Laporta were, but all those rookie tight ends are definitely trying to counteract that rookie tight ends don't produce narrative already, and it looks like they're going to. They're going to get the usage where that's what matters.
So again, uneducated eye like myself, Laporta, his movements, his patterns of movements, his fluidity in movement looked like a big wide receiver to me, and that's exactly what we're looking for. I have no idea if he's a good blocker. I don't know all of those more intricate things that like football related things, but I see his movement, and he had pretty good hands, and he's coming from Iowa, who's obviously has a great track record recently with tight ends.
Yeah, and he can break tackles like really well. He's a great yak guy. I showed that off a lot at Iowa. It's funny because I really don't know who I prefer between Laporta and Musgrave. Me and you made that trade in Wannabe like a month or two ago. I got Butte, but you got David Bell, but it was essentially just Laporta for Musgrave straight up. And they win in completely different ways. The reason I'm excited about Musgrave is he gets downfield. He had 2 different targets this week that I want to say had to have been at least 20+ air yards under them. And that's out of his 4 targets. He was 3 catches, 4 targets, 50 yards. Lost his footing on one, almost walked into the end zone. But I can't be more bullish on Luke Musgrave. If we didn't mention it yet, I'm a Green Bay Packers fan. I watch all of their games every year, follow them in camp, all that stuff. Cannot recommend Musgrave more as a buy. I was telling one of my buddies literally a couple weeks ago, if I had to pick one single player, regardless of position in all of Dynasty, to raise value between now and December, it would be Luke Musgrave. Just because for whatever reason, it did not seem like his value was raising at all over the past few weeks when all the camp reports were that he would be the uncontested tight end 1.
Yeah, he stayed like in that like 3rd, almost 4th at times in rookie drafts. It was unreal for a while, and then he jumped pretty quickly after whatever that signal was to everyone else. But we're talking about someone you love this year. And I think that's a nice segue to go into someone that I remember you talking a lot about and liking last year, and you were ahead of the game, Christian Kirk. So let's talk about the Jags a little bit. So Christian Kirk, I've never been a fan, but I remember, again, you referenced our chat. Our chat goes in a million different directions, but when it's football season, we're getting a lot of football talk, a lot of opinions, a lot of hot takes, with usually some backing behind it. Christian Kirk, you were kind of on an island last year. I remember this, and you got out in early with him a lot. What are your shares looking like now? Have you kind of sold off? I'm hoping, because he looks to me a little dead.
No, we got a lot of shares that are in trouble.
Uh-oh.
No, to be fair, I did make a trade today that we're both in a league where everybody in the league kind of agreed that I got Christian Kirk for more than free. So I did just add another share today.
Punishment.
Yeah, so I did just add another share today, but I have Christian Kirk in 44% of my Dynasty leagues right now. Before today's trade, I had him in 7 out of 18. Now I have him in 8 out of 18. And I agree with you. I would not say he's dead. He's definitely in trouble. So the reason that I liked him last year, I'll try and make it quick, is that, again, the guy I mentioned earlier, a guy that I do follow, Drew, DF Bean Counter on Twitter, he has a bulletproof system that Christian Kirk was always one of the outliers, that he was a bulletproof prospect, and he never quite hit. But he always had these flashes of when he's healthy, he produces. And that combined with his contract, combined with going to Trevor, who I thought had a chance to be an ascending quarterback, combined with Doug Peterson replacing Urban Meyer, I just wanted to invest everywhere I could in Christian Kirk last year. He seemed like the no doubt wide receiver one. He was being valued at about a mid-second round pick overall. So I was like, yeah, give this guy to me on every team I can. I think he ended up with like 14 to 15 points a game last year. He ended up pretty decent. Low-end wide receiver one, high-end wide receiver two in point per game. And I didn't move that many of my shares really. And I just kind of looked to add, and I did think Calvin Ridley would take over the alpha spot in that offense this year. And I did look to add Calvin Ridley where I could this offseason also. But I think the mistake I made is I thought that Christian Kirk was going to be a no-doubter, like floor guy still. I thought he was going to be like a top 36 wide receiver, top 30.
Yeah. Here's the issue is it's not so much Ridley, it's Zay Jones. It's it's Etienne. Zay Jones outpaced him. It's like that's tough. I personally I love Zay Jones as like my late round sleeper that no one seems to care about and always produces. But that's a tough look. Again, it's only 1 week, but Ridley looked like him, and then you have Zay Jones, you have Etienne getting 20 plus touches. That's a lot of mouths to feed for what Kirk is. If he's like a 4 catches for 40 yards guy, like I don't know what you can really do with him.
I think we could be looking at something like Tyler Boyd after Chase arrived. And that would be not great. That would be devastating for the shares. So I'm with you. I have fully turned from a Christian Kirk guy. Well, I was fully buy last year. This year, I was completely neutral. Like, if anything, I would say I just didn't. I should have looked harder to move off some of my shares because I was not as overweight as my shares would indicate this year, in terms of how I felt about them. And now, I would say it's legitimately time to somewhat panic if you have Christian Kirk. Like, he's not going to return whatever value you think he was giving you last year. He's not going back to that.
And it's one of those things, it's sometimes hard to do, but sometimes you got to cut your losses in Dynasty, like, the sunken fallacy. It's just sometimes you just have to bite the bullet, right? So it's like if someone offers you a second, like it might be like that's a slam accept for me. Like I'm sprinting to hit accept.
Yeah, like do something like that.
A
Or,
late second.
I would say Christian Kirk has hit the level after week 1. I would say he's almost bottomed out to that level of asset where you can't sell him ISO anymore. You need to add him to a package for something else that you like or something like that.
Right. So we're talking dead or potentially dead. Great segue into the Chiefs wide receiver duo, right? So I think we can be pretty quick with this. I think we both know where we're at on this. But Sky and Tony, they're dead, right? I mean, I sold Sky for a third. I've seen it for a third a couple other times. I don't love selling him for a third, but it's one of those things that I was so heavily invested in him last year that I need to diversify a little bit.
Yeah, you got to get out. Yeah, I mean, well, and full disclosure, I'm been a Tony fade his entire career.
Yeah.
I've never liked Tony. I don't believe in him at all. So I'm not the right guy to ask for that. I would say that some of the data people would point to, like they always have, his target per route run is insane. And when he's on the field and running routes, they clearly try to get him the ball. That is true. But yeah, I don't want any part of Sky or Tony at all. I would easily just sell for a third. I would say with Sky, I'm trying to get more than a third, but you really can't anymore. So yeah.
So it's you got to wait for a game or some type of
you got to wait for a game that might
favor.
not be coming.
And that's why I traded him twice, but I probably have 15 shares. So it's like, you got to diversify. It's just a matter of like with those question marks, like we had somebody in one of our leagues like asking me about, oh, do you want to buy Sky? Do you want to buy Elijah Moore? And it's like, those are both big question marks to me. Like I'm pretty exposed to both of them. It's tough to say, hey, I want to take on more of that unless you're giving me a clear cut value win. Kind of like what you're talking about with Kirk. Like those aren't guys, in my opinion, that you want to add on to your list.
Yeah, agreed. Like they basically have to be just give me them for free and fine, I'll do it. Like a deal I would already probably accept without them.
Right.
But yeah,
exactly.
Rashee Rice, I have some legitimate interest in. Going back to our rookie discussion, I would point him out as a guy that raised his value this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Not this weekend, but this week's games.
Yep.
I still don't want to go nuts over it. I'm not a Rice guy. I only have I think one share maybe. To me, it was like, hey, I'm not going to fall into the Sky Moore, McCole Hardman trap with Rashee Rice. And now I feel a little bit differently about that. Like I would give up a 24-second for Rashee Rice right now.
I think it would be situational for me personally.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If I'm a contender, a late 24, maybe. I'm still maybe an early 3, but like or 2 3s kind of thing. But he definitely looked decent. But I think we always race in like kind of what you're hitting on to anoint like the next like who's Mahomes' big receiver. And in reality, we know who it is. We know who it is. It's Kelsey.
Yeah,
they looked not great to being nice on Thursday. I would make the claim that Kelsey in a yearly situation of fantasy, so like redraft a situational like super win now team, he is the most valuable in tight end premium. He is the most valuable player you can have of any position. I think his value add positionally, his consistency, his durability. Like this is the first game he's missed in like 7-8 years.
Yeah, no, I think that's another takeaway.
I mean, he's got the best quarterback. Everyone agrees the best quarterback attached to him. I mean,
yeah,
I I've generally faded Kelsey because there's always that one guy in a startup that will take him like in the second or third round or something crazy to me. But you can see the short term obvious gains and values that he provides. So I can't get too upset about it, I guess. And I'm coming around like redraft. I take him second or third depending on what kind of build I want to do, basically.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That was definitely one of my big takeaways watching that Thursday night game is, man, Kelsey's going to score so much whenever he plays. So yeah, no, I'm right there with you.
And I honestly, I don't know if we want to spend too much time on their running backs, but like that, it's kind of in my opinion, a jumbled mess of just like, is it Pacheco? Is it going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire going to pop up for a game, which I hate him, but like, is he going to? Is it McKinnon? McKinnon's a slow starter and seems to come on at the later in the season usage wise. He was barely used in the first game, so it's like one of those things. I think that it's kind of. I'm only again like we're talking about. Those are all toss-in guys, and that's all I want him for personally.
Yeah, Dynasty wise, I'm just not too interested in Kansas City's running backs. I'm not buying Pacheco. I want Pacheco more than McKinnon or CEH. I've just found that the market. I've just found that the market likes Pacheco more than I do. So I don't know what else to do about that. I'm just going to be out on him. Going back to our point before. About Brian Robinson. Maybe Brian Robinson is going to be a good running back to compare all these guys to. I'm not trading Brian Robinson in any sort of plus for Isaiah Pacheco.
Right.
So like that's what I view him as.
So another topic I think we just need to touch on. Obviously, it played a huge role in Week 1, and hopefully not much longer. But is just the general injury. So we're talking Kelsey. We're missing Andrews, Kupp, Christian Watson, Dobbins goes down, Deontay goes down, Rodgers goes down. The list goes on and on. How do we? I guess it's obvious that we can't plan for these things, and that's why like we talked about the market. You can make a good bet. Right, but like sometimes good bets lose. Right, like I thought I made a good bet yesterday on DraftKings. It was over 199 yards for Rodgers. I think it was a good bet, but play 4 happens and then that's toast, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. Hey, I was going to ask you, is there like a way to pause this real quick for just a minute?
Yeah, so just in general, I mean, just touching on the general like injury risk and like best laid plans, I think it's a good story to tell in terms of you don't know what the heck is around the corner. You don't know whose value is going to spike one way or the other. You don't know who's going to go down in injury. So it's kind of like it keeps us in. I would like to think it keeps us in check. That it's obviously bigger than dynasty or fantasy, these injuries, right? But like in general, the game we're playing is dependent on health and just durability in that sense as well.
Yeah, and I think the way that I look at like at least the guys that got hurt or are currently hurt this weekend is I kind of look into team factors in terms of how I'm going to value them. So like we talked about how both of us are definitely down on Pittsburgh's offense after Week 1. So to me, it's like when Deontay comes back, what type of ceiling are you looking at right there? You're looking at 12, 13, 14 points a game, maybe. You're looking at being frustrated week to week if the offense doesn't improve. And I would say on the flip side of that, you can look at Cooper Kupp and Christian Watson and say, okay, well, without those guys, their offenses, they kicked ass this week. Like they looked great. So when those guys come back in a few weeks, they might be stepping into an offense that, has it together. And I know as a Packers fan, speaking personally, Samaje Toure, I believe his name is, like that guy is not a deep threat. He's not even an NFL player. Replace him with Christian Watson. That's a big difference. obviously we can all imagine what Cooper Kupp would do with those 15 Puka targets. So, so I think I kind of look at like what the team did without the player, and then that gives you an idea of what you kind of want to do with him overall,
I think Puka is a good quick topic when we're on the topic of injuries, and obviously he filled in. I was reading an article earlier today. I saw on Twitter that it was just a matter of like talking about how there's overreactions that happen after week one every year, and there's always like this like one or two guys that maybe weren't owned or were super low owned that people are trading for or spending all their FAB on or whatever the case is. And to me, I don't know about Puka. I think he might be serviceable, but it's a matter of like I think it's more like kind of a system set situation that like when Kupp does come back, like Puka is going away entirely. Like Stafford is notoriously a one guy QB. So I mean I wish I grabbed him in free agent like on like the wire like during the off season like for nothing, sure, but like I'm seeing people trade seconds like 24 seconds for him, and it's like this is peak overreaction after week one, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's a guy I don't know what to do with. I have one share and I'm not moving it for less than a 24-second, and I'm not buying him for a 24-second.
So I mean, to that point, it's a great point that you just made, Matt. Where it's like, and you and I think just kind of take this for granted because we talk about it all the time and live it all the time. That it's like selling and buying are two different things, right? Like I can say, like I hate like the person that you talk to in trade talks, like, oh, you just paid a second for, or you just sold them for a second here. Like, yeah, that doesn't mean I want to buy them for a second. That's just not how it works. It's the opposite of how it works, right? Like we're looking for profit and like risk suppression basically, where it's like, yeah, I'll sell Puka for a second because like even if he hits, I don't see him as being more than a second, right? But if he doesn't, I'm profiting.
Yeah, exactly. And like I would say that the thing that worries me with Puka, and this might be like a non sequitur because they're two entirely different players and prospects, but I remember personally a couple years ago, I got extremely excited about Rondale Moore, who was a guy that I was already a little bit excited about. And then he started off his career 4 catches for 68 yards. And then in week 2, he had 7 catches for 114 yards and a touchdown. And after that, it was just wheels up to me. I was like, yes, Rondale, give me all the Rondale. There was one league I paid a first and a second for him. And so yes, do not overreact to Puka's 15 target, 10 catch, 112 yard game. It's awesome, but don't overreact to it.
So I'm in a home league and my team is loaded in this league, and that's humble brag, but I had Rondale Moore. I got him like late second in the rookie draft. I didn't hate him. I saw his limitations. I saw his track record trend in the wrong direction in college.
Yeah.
He was a super early producer that kind of had a terrible last go of it. A little injured, little this, little that. He's obviously small. I sold him for my late, it must have been 22 first or 23 first, whatever the year after him, and Rondale for Jefferson. So like that's definitely one of my all-time clobberings where it was like it was after week 2, like you're talking about. So he had really good first week, awesome second week. Everyone thought he was going to explode. Everyone was talking about how Kyler and that offense was going to explode, and then it was just like absolute like nosedive right after.
And I don't think this is a great comparable situation, but I do think it's something to keep your eye on with both of us in terms of me and you are very bullish right now on Zay Flowers.
Yeah.
There's an argument to be made. Those touches were manufactured. They were without a competent running game. They were without Mark Andrews, etc. The targets were low A dot targets. You want to see Zay winning those intermediate routes, before going too crazy with him.
It's something that we're chasing, that next big guy in like the Zay situation for sure. And I think we talked about this briefly this morning, that it was a matter of like, I almost see it as when I get too bullish on a guy like you're saying, I'm like almost instantly turning him into a sell, right? So it's like right now, like if someone were to offer me a 1 and a 2 for Zay, as long as it's not like a shoe in like 112, like I'm probably doing it, right? So like it's something that I'll at least think about, because it's like if you're going to pay me for like next to close to his, we'll say not his ceiling, but close to it. I mean, okay, we'll cut our losses and understand that this is a pretty fickle game, that sometimes we're wrong and our egos get in the way or our excitement gets in the way, and we don't turn the profit when we have an obvious opportunity for it.
I do think I would say a lot of people that are in 10 plus leagues probably already have an idea about this, but if you are in a lot of leagues, at least let's say 10, I do think that's a great thing that can't be overstated enough. If you have FOMO on a guy or trouble buying a guy, look at the couple shares you have and see, okay, nobody wants to sell this guy. Can I go get whatever for him? Like, nobody wants to sell me Zay Flowers. Okay, can I sell Zay Flowers in like a late first for Garrett Wilson or CeeDee Lamb or something? Like, let me go look at that. So I think that's a good way to approach the market.
People are very high on Zay right now. I got a couple for teams that I already had Zay. And it was, or I'm sorry, that I already had, like, I think the one I'm thinking of was like Wilson. It was like Zay for Wilson. And it was like, I'm giving up Wilson for Zay. And it was like, wait, what? Like, we're hoping that Zay becomes Wilson. It's just like, the classic like overreaction. And I guess we can't judge market off of like one or two people's offers. But for me, you said you're at 18. I'm in like 3 times that. And it's shockingly apparent when certain people have maybe gotten hyped up on Twitter, or everyone's excited about because they saw Zay do this cool thing on Red Zone, or Garrett Wilson's quarterback just went down, like all these things that like people we see it overreacting. You can kind of predict, like, I bet you people ask me for this guy or that guy tomorrow, sort of thing. So it's like, it's almost like you get a feel for that market that people can say, hey, go to Keep Trade Cut or this thing or that thing, or I have this calculator. And you and I and a lot of other people that are really deep into Dynasty right now already kind of have that pulse that, like, I don't need to know like what 1,000 leagues that like are maybe people that I don't trust their process are doing. We have the process of a lot of other people.
Yeah. So I think it's set, and but I also want to be careful not to completely kind of put one side as overreacting, because to me the beauty of Dynasty is you have to react quickly. Because like if Zay is putting up 27% target share in week 7, he's going to be untouchable. You're going to have to pay 3 firsts for him. So like if you have to pay a first and a second right now, yeah, he could be Rondell and he bites you, but he could be Garrett Wilson and then you just stole that guy for a first plus of value.
So are you paying a 1 and 2?
What's that? No.
Are you paying 1 and 2?
I'm not paying. I think your Zay has moved himself into a solidly first round value, and yeah, he was a late first this year. But everybody understood the tier gap after 106 this year, and then he fell in that Laporta, or not that Kincaid, Quinn Johnson, Addison after that tier. But yeah, I would say there is something to the fact that a lot of the times on rookies you need to act quickly.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So we've talked a lot about rookies and I want to touch on one more person. This is one of my guys, Quentin Johnson, right? So like I again in our chat, like I joked throughout the whole off season, throughout all of last football season, QJ, wide receiver one. Do I think that's still a very real possibility? Sure. Am I disappointed with how he started? No, because honestly, he had more, in my opinion, in week one, more of a typical like receiver first week. Like if you go back like historically, like to these big guys that pop, most of them aren't blowing up in week one.
No.
Jefferson, I remember buying Jefferson in like week 3 or 4 everywhere because it was like, he looks the part. Not necessarily working out that way right away, but it's going to come. And people were doubting him because of Cousins and this, that, and other thing, and they like to run and blah, blah, blah. I think Quentin Johnson, especially if like Mike Williams is down for some time, I mean, him and Keenan Allen, the offense looked dynamic against Miami. That was by far the most fun game of the weekend, in my opinion. Miami and the Chargers.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, easily.
So that is, I mean, Eckler, but Josh Kelly, like I'm definitely not like saying like, hey, go and buy Josh Kelly for this or that. But like Josh Kelly has been written off by countless people. He looked pretty good, and he's never going to get the volume if Eckler's healthy.
Yeah.
But I mean, he was pretty damn efficient. The Chargers are super interesting to me this year. I'm a Herbert guy, as you probably know. But what did you see from just the Chargers specifically? We'll talk about the Dolphins here in a sec.
So, man, I really do not like Joshua Kelly. And to be fair, I did not watch this week's game. I did see a stat line that was impressive. Like I think it was like 17 carries, 90 yards, like and a touchdown. So it looks like they used him to kind of punish Miami, the Vic Fangio defense that's aggressive in terms of playing against the pass versus the run. I don't want any part of Joshua Kelly. It does seem like that he is. I agree with you. It seems like he's a running back tone if it's not Eckler, but I don't have the stats in front of me. I feel like we've seen that happen before. Like it gives you 12 carries, 40 yards, 1 catch, 3 yards. Like I don't want him.
He's another guy that I'm buying for cheap, selling for over. Like, right. So like, again, if someone's like, oh, I'll give you an Eckler owner who's like, oh, I'll give you this for Josh Kelly. Like I'll roll the dice. Yeah, sure. I'll take that type of stuff. But.
And really, I mean, to your point, like there's probably, I mean, I feel like I represent probably a lot of the type of dynasty players out there where, I'm in a few leagues and I follow Twitter probably closer than most dynasty players, but like I feel like I'm just the type of person that I've seen Joshua Kelly over the last 2 years. I have no interest in him. And if I have Joshua Kelly on my team, maybe you can get him off me for a 3rd round pick. And, that helps you through some bye week type things. So he might be an interesting buy just in terms of like the market is, I'm sure the market thinks he's bad and knows he's bad. So that much I'm sure of. So I think if anything, like you were saying, the usage plus the public perception might make Kelly kind of an interesting buy. It's so disgusting to me to think of it that way. Like it's not a guy I ever want to roster, but.
I want to make it very, 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 very clear, like crystal. Yeah. This is not Josh Kelly's standalone value hour. That's not what we're talking about. This is simply, I think he's one of those guys based how he looked on week 1. He's an interesting handcuff. That's as pure, like that's as clear cut as I can make it. That's how I'm viewing him. Where I have him, unless someone wants to overpay for him, I'll sell him. But
no, I'd agree with that.
I don't think the market's going to be there.
And to go back to the QJ point just real quick, I would say, and it might change for each personal player, but to me, week 4 is when you really need to react in Dynasty. Like if QJ is getting 3 targets in week 4, I'm heavily concerned. week one, I don't care. And like you, if anything, I'm trying to go buy more QJ right now. But I need to see him involved by week 4 or 5. And I will say for QJ personally, I do think the market has gotten smarter over the last couple of years. I think the market has gotten a better understanding and tolerance of situation. And I think they know that QJ is solidly behind Keenan and Mike Will no matter what this year. So I think all of that will be baked into his price this year. But we still need to see him producing more than Josh Palmer would have in that role by like weeks 5, 6, 7, I would say.
I'm personally hoping for like kind of a slower next couple of weeks because that will definitely, people can know one thing and do another, right? So the panic is going to set in regardless whether they've heard it or not. Like they're 0-3 or something like that. They're staring at another L. They're facing their friend, whatever. Like they want to beat that person. They don't want Quentin Johnson in there and getting 3 catches for 17 yards kind of thing, you know? So I think that's interesting. And now going to the other extreme, Tyreek Hill, unreal, 200 plus yards. We've seen it. It seems like every other week.
Yeah.
Like that's how I feel anyways. What I think is interesting about him is I saw him sold left and right in the offseason. And it was because everyone wants to play the long game, which I understand. And you know me, you know, I play a lot of long games, but those 2 years, it's kind of like Kelsey, that it's like he's giving you insane blow up weeks and value that it's like, who cares? It's 2 years. Like it's 2 years where you're going to kick the shit out of people. Like,
I think Kelsey is his natural comparison, I think. And if anything, I would trust Tyreek to be elite 2 years from now more than Kelsey. But and I think CMC also, you could say, is in that category. But yeah, to me, if I have Tyreek on a contender, I literally I'm straight up declining any offer that anyone is trying to consider his like retirement into consideration. Like if you're talking to me at all about that, then we're not going to be on the same page.
Totally agree.
But I would say Tyreek is worth 2 first-round picks.
I'll also say this, that Tyreek Hill, for his career, it's never made sense to me that people sell him in the offseason. His greatest impact is when he has games like he had on Sunday that like gets everyone buzzing. Like his value, like the day on Saturday before the game and Sunday after the game, it's night and day. Like, not that it was ever super low, but I was seeing like, you know, singular ones or like maybe a low or hot or, you know, like a late 1, early 2 type of combination for him. And now it's like you're saying, like he's almost like everyone's going to view him untouchable because it's like, I just had a 40-point game. He won me the week. That is the time for guys like him. That's when you sell them. You don't sell Kelsey in the offseason. You don't sell Hill in the offseason. You wait for them to blow up a game and then you sell them if that's what your heart desires, I guess.
Yeah, that league that we're in, three-peat, I have the Tua Tyreek stack and literally a bunch of mid guys. We're talking Godwin, DJ Moore, AJ Dillon. I do have Austin Eckler on the team, but like my QB2 is like Jared Goff. And
we're talking 14-team league.
14-team league. And like I believe I led the league in points this week, starting like AJ Dillon and Sky Moore and a couple other like no-name guys that got me nothing, because Tua and Tyreek combined for 75. Yep. Like it's just it's so hard to overstate that, and like it's almost like, I mean, I feel like we could spend 15 minutes on Tyreek Hill. If you wanted to say, I think there's a good argument to be made. He's better than Justin Jefferson right now in their career. That's not a dynasty argument, but like the best wide receiver in the NFL right now is probably Tyreek Hill, in my opinion. I think he can beat you in more ways than Jefferson can. But I mean, that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, I think Tyreek is, Here's what I would say. I think Tyreek probably put himself deservedly a notch above his mates like Devontae Adams, Diggs, and Cooper Kupp's injury, but might have changed things. But like Devontae and Diggs are on that Tyreek level. I would pay a 2 above those two guys to get Tyreek Hill on my team.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think Tyreek has always been about the pop, right? So like he gets you the 200-yard games, where I think Devontae has more. Not that he's not putting up big numbers, but he's more of just like a steady Eddie, where it's like you're getting, 7 or 8 catches, you're getting 110 yards, you're getting a touchdown. Like
yeah, and
that
he'll
is
have the big
outstanding.
yeah, and he'll have the big games too. But yeah, I agree. But I also almost strangely feel like Tyreek's floor has been raised in Miami. Like I feel like he has less stud games, and that could just be wrong. Like I didn't research this, so the stats might not back me up on this, but I just feel like his floor is safer than it used to be in Kansas City. Maybe because of
I think he's getting a higher volume of targets. Again, I haven't looked into it either directly.
Yeah.
But it definitely feels like he's very clearly being force fed as like the wide receiver one. Like, and Tua, speaking just like transition quick, we can't, overlook him.
Yeah.
Tua's got obviously his group of haters, but he's very, 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 very accurate. He understands the touch that he needs to get those two guys involved, him and Waddle. I was a Tua guy for a while. Then I would see people talk a little bit too highly of him, and I almost kind of went contrarian and was like, "Oh, I got to get off of Tua because he can't run. He doesn't have a strong arm, but like he's super accurate. His arm's not as bad as I think at least I originally thought or was judging him as. And obviously he's supporting last year and then so far this year Waddle and Tyreek to elite numbers. So it's hard to knock any of these three on the Dolphins right now.
Yeah, I'm trying to buy Tua, Tyreek, Waddle wherever I can. It's funny. I already saw a poll that Zoltan, our buddy Dynasty Zoltan on Twitter, had today, where he had a poll of just Tua versus Fields straight up, and Tua was 60% versus Fields 40%, and there was a solid 2-round gap in startup value a week ago between these guys. And like that type of stuff kind of was the genesis of you and I talking about starting a pod like this together. But those type of fluctuations cannot be overstated enough, and I feel like they're often ignored in terms of analysis of trades when they happen. We know a lot less than we think we do. Think of the smartest person that you know when it comes to Dynasty football. That person knows way less than even they probably think that they do about who these players are going forward. I just feel like we just always as a community underestimate that.
I think it's important. It's a great point. Yeah. It's obviously it's not just a fantasy skill, but like identifying what you're good and not good at, what you do and don't know. I think it rears its ugly head in Dynasty because people kind of get their egos sometimes in the way. And I think we all fall victim to it at times where it's like, I want to be right about this guy because this was my guy and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And it's something that, you can't react one way or the other, but other people are, and you have to understand that pocket or gap in value, like this Fields and Tua. You might not like Fields or you might not like Tua, but like if you understand that it's a 2-round shift, like you're saying, over a day in one game, it's something that you could easily make a move that is then going to give you 2 or 3 or 4 moves down the line, like we talked about, when you're building up that surplus, when you're building up that, equity that you then can turn into, juggernaut moves, huge moves that like you seemingly make almost every day, maybe 5-10 times a day.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest part of it is that looking. It's hard to kind of it's kind of hard to make moves around like a lot of that uncertainty. But as long as you're not worried about it, I think you just kind of have to like embrace that. Like you have to embrace the fact that like these values are going to change quickly, and I would say there's maybe 10 to 15 players in the entire NFL who have completely insulated value. And now that I think about that, I think my list is high. I think it's more like 8 to 10 players in the entire NFL who, when I say completely insulated value, I mean they're going to tear their ACL today, and tomorrow their value will not change that much. And we're talking Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase,
foundation guys,
the top 8 quarterbacks. Fields is not in that category, and he's a late first-round startup pick. But I don't think Bijan Robinson is in that category, and he's a late first-round startup pick. So we're talking about like 10 guys that to me have absolutely no questions at all about their value insulation. Right. And then to me from there, all these guys can drop 2 to 3 rounds in startup value within 4 to 5 weeks. I mean, we see it every year. So to me, that's like a big thing to keep in mind with all these trades. They're like our boy Littlefinger on Game of Thrones says, chaos is a ladder. Like this is a time of year to take advantage of that.
Preach on. We saw it. We were talking before we got on here. We're in a league together that you, me, and one other team trying to tank off basically, right?
Yeah.
And it just led to this spiral of trades that got all sorts of different commentary. This person got killed. This person ruined the league. That person did that. And it was like, it all started with just like a whisper of just like, okay, well, this person wants to be 101. Actually, I want to be 101, right? Like everyone's chasing Caleb Williams or Bijan Robinson or whoever that next big guy is, right? So it's important to like, I think some other guys in the league were like, oh man, I'm sorry, I missed out on this, or I missed out on that window or gap that we talked about. That those things happen, and you have to be ready for it. It maybe doesn't happen as quickly as ours did today. It was, a matter of hours, like 3 teams completely changed, either positively or negatively. That's up to you. But you have to be ready to, at a moment's notice or a day's notice, make a move and not sit on your hands while someone else is, right? Because if you're not, someone else is, and then it's your value is potentially lost.
Yeah, and like with this being a podcast about trading and values and all that, that league is a perfect league to mention. Like you said, me, you, and this other guy were in a 3-way tank for Caleb, and this guy had already made some trades where it's safe to say he lost on value by a decent bit to go in that tank direction. And so it was clear this guy was going to get rid of any players that he had to make sure he got Caleb. Like everybody knew this going in. And my team is terrible in that league. Definitely before this trade it was. I had Anthony Richardson, Zay Flowers, Dotson, Rashee Rice. Like I'm literally naming the next most valuable players on my team. So like you said, it was in line for like 102. And so yeah, I was like, all right, okay, this guy wants Caleb no matter what. He has Joe Burrow, Mark Andrews. Let me see, like he has Garrett Wilson. Let me see what he's willing to give up to make sure he gets Garrett. So he's counting my first as an early pick, I'm sure. This other guy in the league has early to mid first, I would say. Not early though, but like probably 106, and then another first that's late, 110 to 112, and then my second, which would be an early to mid second. So those 3 firsts and a second. After a few counters, traded him those 3 firsts and a second for Joe Burrow, Mark Andrews, and Christian Kirk. And going back to our earlier discussion, I did not want to add any additional Christian Kirk. Like literally, he was the only guy on the team that made sense. It was like Christian Kirk or Deion Jackson. Like, okay, I'm not that down on Christian Kirk. Like, I'll take him. So I took him in that trade, and that's the thing about staying flexible. Like, so I'm still somewhat rebuilding it. Not even somewhat. I'm still rebuilding in that league, and I do not have my first round pick anymore. But it's important to stay flexible like that because you literally look at the trade and like I penciled that pick in for 102. And I was like, I will still do this trade. Like if he gets Caleb and I get 102, I still like getting Joe Burrow, Mark Andrews, and Christian Kirk for 3 first-round picks that aren't Caleb Williams.
I mean, specifically Burrow that's the type of guy that you want Caleb to be, right? So like,
right. So yeah,
makes total. You have a foundational piece. Like you're looking for a foundational piece with 101 in reality, or you're trying to trade and get someone to give you a ton of stuff. Those are the 2 options, right? Like so, especially when there's a fawn-to-pond player like Caleb. So I think it makes total sense. I mean, we can debate for an hour about like all the different decisions that were made between everyone, but it's a matter of like. As long as that all the people in the league have like some type of clear-cut route that they're going, it's never going to break a league, right? So like you can always recover from stuff as long as you understand where your next step is and where you're fed, you know.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So I wanted to we're talking about like some foundational pieces. I know for me. London, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. Are we worried? Are we worried about their quarterback play? Are we worried about their offense in general? I know we just talked about how we're both high on Bijan, but like, receiving and like, Pitts had a great rookie year. London had a very solid rookie campaign. Like,
yeah, I wish I remember.
Are we concerned?
I wish I remember who said this. I saw a tweet today that it just mirrored what I felt about Kyle Pitts and Drake London, where they were basically saying, hey, look, all of us that follow the, for lack of a better word, analytics about all of these prospects and players, look, we understand the target share argument for Kyle Pitts and Drake London. We understand the peripheral numbers that suggests that these guys are elite talents that we should invest in early and hold on to. But there is somewhat of a catch a falling knife thing by trading for either one right now in Dynasty in terms of it's like, why would you expect their production to get better this year? I just would not. So if you want to invest in either one of them, it's hard when, like, let's say, like, if someone's offering you Drake London for Zay Flowers, based on the reaction and the polls that we've seen on Twitter, that's a trade you can do. And me and you are both taking the London side on that, as excited as we are about Zay Flowers. But like, unless you can do something like that and just take advantage of a 1 week overreaction, I would kind of caution on buying either one of London or Pitts right now. I feel like they will be available for the same price 3 months from now. And to me, if they're not, that would confuse me, because to me, the London and Pitts owner, by now, the London and Pitts owner should believe in them, and they should understand the fallacy of trading them low under bad circumstances and all that stuff. by now, London and Pitts should be on the team that like believes in them. And I think
they're me and you. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So like, so I don't see any advantage in buying them right now. And I think their production is not going to warrant any kind of bump this year. I would be surprised by that. So I think you're looking at best at like, you could probably buy them for the same cost in January.
Right.
But again, this is a key part of any type of trading, any type of value discussion. Always comes down to knowing your league mates, right? And I could be wrong. Like you could be in the league where the guy that just got Drake London in a trade like 2 months ago and doesn't really like him, and now he's freaking out about the goose egg, and he'll trade you him for, whatever. So yeah, I mean, there's always differences. Know your league mates. Definitely throw out feelers, but I would say I'm not buying London or Pitts from like you, for example.
Right. Yeah.
Like I'm gonna wait until like there's a better buy opportunity.
I just on this point in general, it's not exclusive to Pitts or London, but I think they're good examples. You can learn a lot from like the league chat. Like
Yeah,
we've talked about people being on tilt, or like we'll talk separately and be like, man, this guy really he wants this guy off his team, right? And you're going to have them basically have this internal deadline in their head that they're putting pressure on themselves, that they're selling the guy by the end of the day. You kind of know that they're selling it, and it's just a matter of waiting them out, or just being patient in general, and you're going to get that player. So like, to me, like, again, I'm not searching out buying London or Burks or like guys that I'm already pretty exposed to.
yeah.
But like, if I see someone in the league chat just like talking about like, oh my God, Burks can't get any targets and Tannehill sucks and this and that, maybe it's right, but like, I still trust my valuation of that player. If I still believe in that guy, like you can still find windows. Like you're like it just like Christian Kirk, like at some point the cost is right and you're going to get that guy, and then you're just hoping worst case you can flip them or something later on when that value boosts back up to where it should be. Even if it's not back to the ceiling, it's back to like normal Drake London value versus what it was because he had 2 bad weeks.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, we could almost preface literally every trade discussion we have with like know your league mates, man, because like I feel like that point cannot be overstated enough. Me and you have certain trade offers. I'm sure we would not even consider sending to each other that we'll send to certain league mates that just because we know how they react to certain news. Not gonna call any of them out by name, but there's a couple that I'm thinking of that like you just see them in the like to your point, you just see them in the chat after every big play or every big fumble or every like this guy tweaks his leg and he's in the chat like tilting. Like these guys kind of expose themselves, and like you kind of know who we're talking about when we talk about the players in your league that are wear their heart on their sleeve type thing in the chat, and like they're giving you information that they don't even know that they're giving you in terms of trading with them. So yeah, I would say always listen to that, man. Like if you have the time in your schedule, pay attention to the words in the league chat and the actions of the transactions that your league mates are making, for sure.
And this doubles down on what I talked about at the beginning here, where it's like you don't have to be a football guy to pick up on these types of cues, right? And that's the big thing to realize, that especially if you're just like relying on like, if it's like, oh yeah, Zoltan says this guy is good and here's why, and he gives you evidence, or whoever your favorite person is, then use that and understand that you can leverage potential value off of.
And I would say you can even leverage it against what I would say are sharper league mates in terms of like the Trey Lance thing is a perfect example. Like back in December, January, February, you could have easily had a good read on that situation. Been like, you know what? I see what these guys saw in Trey Lance. He's not going to be it. He's way worse than Purdy in every split game scenario. I think they're either going to bring Purdy back, or if he's not healthy, they're going to bring in someone else. I just want off the Lance train. And you could find some sharper people back in January that would have given you a mid-first for Trey Lance. So again, that's kind of knowing your league mates and being like, if a guy has a darling, like, analytical profile and you don't like that guy, you can go. It does not need to be like the taco of your league that you go to. You can offload a guy to a guy who knows what he's doing, and he's just willing to take that educated gamble on the risk reward profile of the guy. So I would say that's another way to look at it.
And I think what you're describing and what some other people that I've seen or heard in terms of like preying on people, this is not preying. It's just picking up on non-verbal or sometimes verbal cues that like so-and-so is giving this, I don't want this player, right? Versus like you trying to trick this person, or like that's like when I kind of like, yeah, you know, not to use this negatively, but like the used car salesman type stuff, when they get in the chat and they're just like, oh man, you know, this guy's worth this, and why would you want to pay that for that person? Where you're just like, it all feels like a load of shit, basically. Where, you know, that's not, to me, that's not what the game's about. Like that's not, you're not trying to like swindle people. Like you and I think a lot of people in a good way will, you know, I know sometimes I'm going to lose trades, right? And, you know, I know that the chat especially, like, you know, kind of teases me about it, that it's like, I'm never going to try and like lose value. Sometimes it happens, right? I think I gained some value up today in the Fools League, right? So it's like sometimes those opportunities come up, and even if it is value given, it might work out for my roster, my build.
Yeah, and to that point, like, yeah, definitely there should not be any kind of negative connotation about going after, like, you know, the weaker or less knowledgeable players in your league, because a perfect example of what I was saying in terms of you can actually punch up at times if you think you know where the story's going. Is a guy that I would say knows a lot more than I do about Dynasty and how to be successful at it. Dynasty Zoltan in that league that popped off today, target sharing league. Back in June or July, I made a trade with him where I specifically targeted him, and at the time he was rebuilding. And now he's flipped to contender. But at the time he was rebuilding, and I knew he would accept this trade as soon as I sent it. And I sent him Trey Lance for Joe Mixon straight up. I got Joe Mixon, he got Trey Lance. And that was an example of a trade where I wasn't targeting someone less knowledgeable. I was targeting someone that knew the risk or knew the reward that came with Trey Lance's profile and understood the risk and was willing to buy the risk for the reward. And I would say today that trade looks awesome. Of course, even if you don't like Joe Mixon at all, you're taking him on any build over Trey Lance, I think. So those are that's what I mentioned when, in terms of like, if you see the writing on the wall, it's okay to just get out on a player, and you don't need to target like the gullible guys in your league. Like Mike knew what he was doing when he made that trade. He knew full well that Trey's value could go to zero within a month. And it's not like Mixon had a lot of upside to offer. It was just a productive running back to throw in the flex. So,
right.
So I think those are, like we said, it just comes down to knowing the league personnel. And no matter what type of player someone is, there should be a way to try and target an inefficiency of theirs, is what I would say.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, I mean, we've spent a lot of time on it tonight, obviously. I'm sure we'll be talking about it again, and we'll be talking about it again and again and again, right? So it's, history repeats itself in this sense. We'll keep belaboring the point. But I want to touch on a few other things before we wrap up tonight. I think we can combine a couple here, and just based on, again, we'll do week one overreactions or maybe not. There were some projected bad defenses that maybe they're not as bad as we thought they were, right? So we're thinking Colts, Rams, Bucks, Pats. Do we see any real sustainable production from any of those, or any ones that I didn't list that maybe were on the top of the sexy list before the season started that might pop up there as a nice little darling?
No, so those were the teams that I was looking at. The Rams, Colts, Rams, Bucks, and Pats. To me, I would kind of split them up right into two groups. I would say the Bucks and Pats look better than we thought week one. I am not trying to buy into that offense too much, except our boy Pop Douglas, who is like our group chat favorite, Demario Douglas, nicknamed Pop Shotta. I'm not really sure, but Pop Douglas on the Patriots, he's like a 6th-round rookie wide receiver that folks like. But no, so I would split them up though, right? Like Patriots and Bucks. Patriots and Buccaneers have not swayed my opinion of their offense week one. I thought the Patriots were better than I expected against the Eagles. I'm still not excited about anyone in that offense except Hunter Henry might be a pretty solid low end or tight end one. And the Bucks, I would say that people probably faded Godwin and Mike Evans too far. I'm not excited about that offense, but people were acting like they were going to put up 12 points a game. I think they're showing that Baker can probably run like an okay offense. They're going to be bottom 15 in points. I would expect all that. They're not going to be good. But they, given Mike Evans and Godwin's talent level and their costs that they currently are, I would say that they're pretty solid buys. And then, but the two to me that are interesting are the Rams and Colts. People had those as legitimately two of the 4 or 5 worst teams in the league this year. They thought that the offense would be in shambles without Kupp, like Stafford's injuries, all that. The Colts were expected to be kind of a disaster, no wide receivers outside of Pittman, etc. And if there's still kind of that value market gap perception, I'm trying to take advantage of that. Like I want some of the Rams and Colts offensive players now, and I would not have maybe said that a couple days ago.
I think they're definitely worth monitoring. There's no doubt about it. To me, I think I'm on the same page with you. Colts, Rams. Those are two teams that I think I could see having some fun weeks, some fun growth in player value. I'm a little less into the Bucks and Pats at the moment, but I'm a Ram guy, so we'll see. Rodgers,
yeah,
and not Rams.
I would say with the Rams especially. With the Colts, I just think it's AR, really. I just want AR everywhere I can. But I do think Pittman's more viable than he was before. And then I'm really not sure about anyone else besides AR, to be honest. But, man, if McVay and Stafford, if Stafford's healthy and McVay and Stafford are just going to give it an honest go of it this year, I want every pass catcher on the Rams. Like, honestly.
People seem to like Stafford. People just forget, Stafford has up and down seasons, but when he's healthy, when he's right, it's not always tons of wins in the wins and losses in real football sense, but he's gonna produce some things if he's healthy. That's what his whole career says.
And also, it kind of felt like some people kind of, and I was guilty of this too, I think, because I definitely was not investing in Rams players this offseason, but I feel like some of us have forgotten what McVay is as a play caller. And he does not need 3 elite offensive weapons to call a great offense. He needs a good quarterback, and he needs to give him some protection. And yeah, like I'm not saying Stafford's like some mid to high end level QB1 this year or anything like that. But if Stafford's upright and they're trying to contend, and they definitely look like they were trying to compete this year, I want any type of pass catchers on the Rams at cost right now. Any of them. Give me Tutu Atwell and Puka. That's the thing, right? Like Tutu, I'm pretty sure you can get Tutu for cheap right now. But Puka, I don't know, man. People might just be like out of pocket with his costs. So I don't have a good idea of what the Puka market is. I have not seen any trades go down since his game. It seems like a mid to late 24 second is about where the community settled, which I think is fair.
I saw a second, one time.
Yeah, a second I think is fair. Are you selling in for any second right now?
I'm selling in for any second. Yeah, if I have them. Yeah. It's just one of those things. Like it, sometimes you're wrong, but I don't think his ceiling's much higher than that, even if he's something. So it's like one of those. I mean, I don't see like the opportunity of keeping him is not worth it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
If someone wants to pay that. But I get it on the other side too. If someone's like really excited and they're like, oh, this is like the new cup or something like that. I don't know. But I just don't see it. But
no, I think
I'm wrong all the time. So like that's just how I'd rather just like, like blackjack, I don't play around with like, sometimes hitting on 16, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Like I'm settling. I'm either doing one or the other. I'm not going to play around with it.
No, and I think the blackjacks analogy is a great one because to me, you don't want to get caught up in the individual case-by-case nature of a lot of these trades. You just want to say, okay, dealer has a 7, I have a 16, I'm folding, like that type of shit. You really don't want to be like, well, I saw this guy make this one catch this one time, and just look at the profile, look at the data, look at like the comparable players, and just decide that way. This guy is probably not going to break the mold. But also, yeah, I could see the other side in terms of you don't want to give that guy up after 15 targets. But this is Puka. To me, Puka is a great case of his value is going to change week by week until it settles.
Yeah. And so this just our last topic. I want to touch on something that I think is like an important, I think pretty commonly talked about thing, but I just wanted to, make reference to it real quickly. But buying futures, not to jump completely to a different set out here, but we were just talking about seconds. But buying futures it's a great time to do it right now, right? Yeah. So like buy them now. I think there's a lot of people that wait until draft time or rookie hype or literally in the draft and you're just getting bent over on trades. This is the time that like, I know like some people I'll see in chat like, oh, I don't even know if I'll be alive in 2025. It's like, yeah. All right. Well, I mean, sure. But if I can buy a 2025 one because no one cares about it or they're not thinking about it and they're like, oh, I would love to get this guy that can help me right now. My 2025 one is going to turn into something real nice where I can profit very easily, whether it's, making the pick or trading that pick when it becomes more valuable. And just 2024 is a great example. Everyone was hyped out about 2023. I went out and just grabbed tons of 2024s. Right now, 2024 is shaping up. In my opinion, it's looking pretty good right now. You have a potentially a deep QB class with a high-end QB. You have a decent couple of running backs. You have a couple high-level receivers. You have a high-level tight end prospect. Things will emerge still. College is still fresh, but like these are things that like we could easily profit from. So it's you want to dive into that. I mean, I totally recommend, and I know some new dynasty players especially don't like to like get involved with like the rookie picks because they never hit and all that stuff.
They never hit.
It's just bonkers to me. So I just wanted to touch on that quick, get that off my chest.
Yeah, I would say with buying rookie picks, there's two main market inefficiencies that you can exploit, right? So one is to your point about buying that year plus one pick. Like, so right now you'd be buying 25 picks instead of 24. Last year, 24 instead of 23, et cetera. The thing that the market inefficiency you can exploit there is that these picks are always have the potential of being better than you think, right? Like, so right now we all have a good idea of who's going to finish kind of in what tier, bottom four, mid tier, top four of each league that we're in. But again, like we've been discussing all episode, the fluctuation of values, it's so hard to understate how often these values change and how unpredictable they are. And so it's definitely the best way of you getting an early first pick while valuing it as mid to late. And I would say even going into just the next year's future picks. So right now, talking about 2024 picks, if you buy a Juggernaut's 2024 first, you guys are both pricing it in as late. There's no way for you to lose value on that trade. And I cannot emphasize this enough. If you guys both value a future first round pick as a late first, 110, 111, 112, and you guys make that trade, there is only one way for your trade to go, and that's up. Like that pick can only be worse than you anticipated. It can't or better for you. And so I feel like that's another thing. People look at contending first, and I don't want that. It's only going to be a late first. Okay, well, like in the last few years, that late first could get you guys like Christian and Watson, Chris Olave, going back a couple of years, T. Higgins, guys like that.
I'll talk, and like with that, I had a couple this year where, like in 2023, I had, I stacked up a couple late firsts. You can file those late firsts into like getting you into, Anthony Richards, AR or Gibbs, like that type of range, or if you liked, Stroud or Young, especially this year's draft, you could say, hey, I'll give you 110 and 112 or something like that. And, let me get 106 or something something that maybe doesn't look good on the surface, but if you understand the tiers or if you have those tier breaks, that can make you a huge difference.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So I think this is a good wrap point, but I think the important thing is to remember that it's always changing. It's ever evolving. Everyone's going to be wrong sometimes. Don't sit there and just be like the boring manager that just drafts a team and then just those players die on his team. It's not gonna pay the dividends that I think you're hoping to receive by being safe. Right. You have to put yourself out there here and there, even if it's calculated.
Yeah. And I would say an important point to remember there is if you're being stagnant in Dynasty, you're most likely losing value because you're not reacting to the marketplace. Your players' values are fluctuating, whether you want to react to them or not. Your players' values are fluctuating. So it's up to you to kind of try to stay ahead of that shifting tide. Or you could be, like you said, you could be the type of player that, you're more conservative. You don't want to make too many rash decisions. I understand that. But as the band Rush said, if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. So if you're just being stagnant, you're actively buying any player that you're not selling. That's something that a few people that I've heard say that, and I do think there's something to that. So if you're ignoring the pockets of market fluctuation value that we have been talking about, you're just kind of doing yourself a disservice.
Should have get off the pot. Yeah, I think Rush is a great way to wrap. So yeah, I mean, I think we talked you guys' ears off today, but hopefully it kind of causes some decision making, some thought process to maybe change or think about different opportunities, different thought processes. and hopefully we can talk again soon. And we'll admittedly probably be wrong about half the stuff we said tonight, but that's how it goes.
At
Thanks,
least.
man.
Yep. Thanks.
All right. We'll talk to you.
All right. Later.